We're going to record this. Bruce Schwartz, how are you?
Good.
We have some more seats up front, so if you can find a seat.
Well, I want a chair. Mayor. Hey, good job.
Wonderful that you're here.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks again for lunch.
Yeah, party. You know, these meetings are really the only time we have to educate ourselves about homelessness and communicate with each other. So we hope that part of this meeting will be a chance for you to interact with us on a variety of topics. So your attendance really at these meetings is just crucial for it. We learn a lot from you, and that's important to us. So thanks for being here. Before I review the agenda, I just want to acknowledge several people. First of all, John Messeri, Executive Director of People Concerned. Very busy guy, so we're grateful that he's taken the time to be with us. And wonderful Glenda and Maureen, who are here. And Luther, their boss. We appreciate you both together. And everybody on the task force board and committee, stand up for a second. Only take a second. Who are you? Okay. Okay, so we have a two-part agenda tonight. We're going to hear from John Messeri about how the People Concerned actually works, and the outreach team in conjunction with all the support behind them. And after that, we're going to have time for Q&A. Then the second part, if time allows, is we're going to review the draft panhandling guidelines that were put out on your chairs. So we'll have a chance to talk about that, get your feedback. These were created, this is the basis of this was the discussion we had about panhandling at the April meeting. So, for those who are new to the task force, it was in 2016 that the People Concerned worked with us as an agreement to have the amazing outreach team work with us. So we have Glenda and Maureen 5 days a week, and I think that it is a part of our success is because of the consistency of them being here. And that's rare. In other communities that we've talked to, they have somebody 1 day a week, one person, and they have police there, once in a while. So I think the other thing that we may not appreciate as much as we should is the work that Glenda and Maureen and Luther go above and beyond the call of duty to get these people services and housing. So we just can't thank them enough for the kind of work that they do. So we're grateful for that partnership that we have. So because we received many, many questions about, from the community about what happens to our homeless once they are off the streets, and how do we approach them, that we thought it would be helpful for you to learn from John about the nature of these services and the work that Glenda, Maureen, and Luther do. So his presentation is going to help us understand more about, also about the newly organized, the People Concerned, that is a result of a recent merger. So with that, I'll turn it over to John Messeri.
Is that, yeah, well, that's good. I'm usually not accused of having a soft voice, so. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you being here. And I really want to underscore our gratitude and appreciation to the task force for all the heavy lifting that you've done that really has created the opportunity here in your community to field the team. We are so proud of them. It's quite unusual, actually. In our outreach teams, they're usually a man and a woman, so it's quite unusual to have two women. But for you women in the audience, if you want to get something done, get a woman to do it, right? So we're very proud of Glenda and Maureen. And actually, do you want to take a moment and just stand up? I know many people in the room know you, but really, they do the hard work every single day. And I'm so proud to be working with them. So this is really under the category of it does take a village. And so tonight, we're going to talk about kind of what happens behind the curtain a little bit. You hear a lot about the team and about outreach, but there's a lot more to it. That really is the beginning of the process. And so at the people concerned, and let me just take a moment to describe our organization. So many of you may know us as OPCC, Ocean Park Community Center. We were OPCC for 52.5 years, and about a year and a half ago, we merged with a sister organization, LAMP Community downtown. Some of you may be familiar with LAMP. What you may not know is LAMP was actually started by one of my predecessors, a woman named Molly Lowry, who was the director at OPCC from 1976 to 84, and then went downtown to start LAMP Community. It was always her hope that the two organizations would be combined, and unfortunately she passed away from ovarian cancer last year, but she had the opportunity to see her dream realized. So the people concerned carries on the proud legacy of OPCC and LAMP Community. So a new name, but we still are very much committed to a comprehensive integrated model of housing and services, and I'm going to describe what that means and try not to be too jargony tonight. So we're going to kind of walk you through a day in the life of the Pacific Palisades outreach team. We'll talk about what outreach and engagement is, what the purpose is, and the ultimate goal, of course, is permanent supportive housing. So for us, it's not just about getting people housed, it's about keeping them housed, because we're not doing anybody any favor if we get them into housing and then they fall out of housing because they just are recycling in and out of very expensive systems. So I want to start with a quote from Francis of Assisi. So outreach has been active for centuries, and we really see, I see this quote as really embodying the spirit of not only our philosophy, but really the work on the ground. We've been called to heal wounds, to unite what has fallen apart, and to bring home those who have lost their way. And I very much see that as the essence of the work that we do concerned every day. So let's talk about outreach and engagement. We do not, and I'm happy to see our colleagues in law enforcement here. One of the differences is you notice we don't have a badge or a gun. So our ability to work with people is based on our ability to develop a relationship and to develop trust with them. So we work very closely with law enforcement, but our work is more on the carrot side of the equation. Is that me, or is that okay? It's when I move back and forth. So part of the problem with me is you got an Italian guy who likes to move and talk with his hands. So if that annoys you, you tell me and I'll put down the microphone and start yelling at you. So outreach is really a face-to-face interaction with people experiencing homelessness. And it takes place everywhere, in streets, parks, libraries, public spaces, the beaches and freeway overpasses. Really anywhere that homeless people are in this community. And I must say, I was telling Sharon earlier that I come to the Palisades quite often, and the streets are looking pretty good these days. There has been a marked improvement, and one thing I don't know if all of you know, but every year the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority in January does a point-in-time count. Your community is the only census tract in the entire county of Los Angeles where there's been a 50% reduction in street homelessness. That is due to the work of this community and the team. So you should be very proud of that. This is in a county of 4,300 square miles. So that is no easy feat, believe me. And the purpose of outreach is to meet basic needs. The reason these words are bolded is because that's really the essence of the work of outreach, is to build trust and rapport with individuals who do not access traditional services and connect people with our 7 core services. So we realize that the people that we work with and people who've been out on the streets a long time generally are not in a position, because of their physical disabilities, to present necessarily and say, I need help. Most people living with serious mental illness don't say, I'm mentally ill. Or most people struggling with substance addiction don't acknowledge that that's an issue or challenge for them or a barrier. Most people with chronic health conditions, even though they may be aware that they have health problems, are usually in denial about how severe those problems are. So the point of outreach is really to provide a non-traditional modality to reach these people and build trust and relationships. So our fundamentals in outreach are that we meet people where they are, literally where they are. So geographically, that's the reason why street-based outreach is so important, is because we're not relying on people to come to us, we're going to them. Emotionally and physically. This is really important in terms of the relationship development. We operate on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so it's very difficult to convince somebody that they want or need permanent supportive housing or any other services if they're sitting in front of you and they're hungry, or if they haven't had a shower in a couple of weeks, or if they don't have shoes, or they don't have a clean set of clothes. So it's really about whatever their basic needs are, we work from there. We're not in the business, we're very clear that we are not in the business, we don't change, rescue, or fix people. People change, rescue, and fix themselves. We provide the resources and the support for people to make informed choices about their lives. So this is really very much about meeting people's basic needs. We're always respectful and we treat everyone with dignity. So it doesn't matter, even if the person, and Maureen and Glenda can tell you that sometimes, you know, and this is hard, I think, for most of us to understand, those of us who are in a position where we consider ourselves fairly high functioning. We always imagine, if I were on the streets and someone came to me and offered me housing or offered me medical care or whatever else I needed, you imagine, or at least I will say for myself, I'd imagine I'd jump into their arms, right, and say, take me away. That's not how it happens at all. Often what we get met is with a lot of resistance. No, I'm fine, everything's fine, leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you. Sometimes they get yelled at, spit upon, things thrown at them. Unfortunately not all the time every day, but it happens. But they keep coming back. So consistency is really important in this work, and being respectful of people, understanding that people often take a very long time to engage. That's the thing that I think that's hardest for most community members to understand and kind of wrap our brains around, is that if this was easy, we would have solved this problem a long time ago. It's hard work. It's a day in and day out slog. Recognize that building relationships is central to outreach. So we, at the basis of everything we do, trust and a mutually respectful relationship is key. And then creating a safe, open, friendly space to communicate regardless of the setting. So when the team is going out, they're not running up on people. They respect the fact that even when people are living outdoors and in open areas, that's their space. So we don't get up in people's faces. We don't, wag our fingers at them. We don't tell them you have to do this or you have to do that. We always keep a respectful distance, and we're trying to engage and build a relationship, but understanding that even in an outdoor space, that there has to be a respectful distance. So we're going to come back to Jill. This is a before picture of Jill. So she's one of your homeless neighbors. She was homeless for 10 years, and then, by the way, Jill is a real person. All the people you see here, this is not contrived at all. It's not, it's designed to make you feel good, but it's truthful. And so we're going to introduce you to Jill now and then kind of see the transformation that happens in her journey. She finally decided to say yes to Glenda and Maureen, and her pathway led her through many of our services that we're going to talk about that will, later you'll see where those services landed Jill. So this is kind of what a typical day looks like. There is no one size that fits all. Not every homeless person is mentally ill, is substance addicted, struggling with chronic health condition, or is a victim of domestic violence. However, all of these conditions touch homeless people. And so We very much believe in and preach the gospel of comprehensive, integrated wraparound services, because we know that we have to be prepared, if we're going to meet people where they are, to be able to provide these kinds of integrated services. Meaning that often when you work with people, they don't necessarily present, as I said earlier. Most people struggling with serious mental illness don't say, "Hi, I'm John and I'm a schizophrenic," or "I have bipolar disorder," or I smoke crack, or "I'm an alcoholic." That's not how we usually present ourselves, and it's the way most of our clients don't present themselves either. So we have to really adapt ourselves to understand where they're coming from. Meeting people where they're at, and you'll hear that a lot because it really is the essence of the work. Is really understanding that every person is unique, and if you've seen one homeless person, you've seen one homeless person. That's not to say that there aren't issues or challenges that cut across working with homeless people, but every person is individual. And so the people that we work with have experienced a lot of trauma in their lives, and that contributes to where they are in their own journey. I mentioned earlier, our partners in law enforcement are a critical component of outreach. There are times when it's necessary to involve law enforcement, and quite frankly, sometimes law enforcement has a better relationship than we have. There are times when people, you've heard the phrase 5150 or writing a hold. We have mental health professionals who can do that, but law enforcement also has the ability to help and support on that. And often when people need to be transported to the hospital, law enforcement plays a critical role. Sometimes law enforcement can also be very helpful if people are engaging in antisocial behavior. I know you're going to talk about panhandling later on, when people are aggressive, or when they are actually committing crimes. And that's not to suggest that all homeless people or most homeless people commit crimes, because most of them don't. But if they're engaged in activity that is against the law, then it's law enforcement's responsibility to intervene. So we very much appreciate our partnership. And then, of course, as I said earlier, relationships matter most. That is the fundamental essence of the work. And when you think about it, that's really what makes the world go round for all of us. And you think about in your own life that your relationships are really key. Here's our wonderful outreach team. So just a day in the life of Glenda and Maureen hanging out by the beach. It doesn't look like they're doing very much, but actually I can tell you they are. That's probably a housing application, and they're probably calling the housing authority trying to get an appointment for somebody. And here's with our law enforcement, Rusty and Jimmy. I don't know how we didn't get Jimmy's name up there, but
Well, he's in the back.
he's in, yeah. This is, so this really is a mobile team effort. They work out of vehicles, and they have basic needs supplies. Water, personal hygiene kits, socks, food. What else have you got in those magic bags? Basically anything that you can beg, borrow, or sometimes, no, I won't say steal, because we never steal. That they actually have available, and they have backpacks. So if you see them, how many of you have actually seen the teams out on the street? Yeah, so you see them walking around, those backpacks really have stuff in them. It's really important. So this is, again, sort of a typical encounter. We've obviously got LA Fire Department involved here, and you see Glenda. And this is not uncommon in terms of the work. There's a lot of folks live in encampments. In addition to working in the Palisades, we work in Malibu as well, and you see far more encampments. I know when we first started working in the Palisades, there was a lot of concern about encampments in the bluff areas. And I know that continues to be a bit of a challenge, especially during fire season. People are very concerned about this, but this is not atypical when you see homeless people tend to hoard belongings. And so when you think about providing services, it's not just about serving the individual, but thinking about what are you going to do with all of their belongings. So the other very important component of outreach is the street medicine component. We've been very fortunate to have as a key partner Venice Family Clinic. If you're familiar with Venice Family Clinic, they're the largest free clinic, federally qualified health center west of the Mississippi. They have been operating in the West Side for over 4 decades. They have a very strong passion for working with our population, and quite frankly, it's very challenging to find physicians who want to go out and do street medicine. But we are very fortunate that we have several physicians at Venice Family Clinic that partner with the team. So they go out and they'll do basic medicine on the street. So wound care, assessment, they carry medication with them. And the goal is really to engage the person, build a relationship, and then get them to primary care at either our clinic, on site at our Access Center, or at Venice Family Clinic's clinic.